Our next two speakers are Charlie Ellis and Rich Hoormann. Charlie is a regional natural resource engineering extension specialist for the University of Missouri Extension based in Lincoln County. And Rich is a regional agronomy extension specialist, again working for the University of Missouri Extension based in Montgomery County. And they will be talking about on-farm cover crop trials.
Is this working? I'm going to briefly talk about some of the seeding methods Rich and I have been attempting to use with seeding of the cover crops. Some of the things when we talk to farmers, what are they wanting? They're wanting something that's quick. We've talked about seeding these in the fall. They're going to already be crunched for labor and time, cheap, simple. They're looking for a payback, and as Dr. Bradley's already talked about, we don't want to be introducing any additional species out there that could become a weed. Some of the challenges to the seeding is timeliness in the fall, available equipment. Our planting equipment are not coming out of the plant set up to seed cereal rye or radishes, and you kind of have to make that connection of what they're similar to. Finding that optimum seeding date within the time crunch of harvest is challenging. In the fall, we'll go quickly on variable planting conditions from too dry to too wet. Residues in the fall planting into are much more challenging than after they've decomposed over the winter, and that type of thing. This is Midwest Cover Crop Council website. They have a selector tool on there. Missouri is not part of that database as of yet, so I went in there and pulled out Pike County, Illinois, which is near Lincoln County, right across the river. And it's a good selector tool in areas where you can make that cross-reference. You can put in different species there, what you're looking for them to do. That vertical red line I put there is September 15th. That's kind of a threshold when you look at a lot of those in the green bar of seeding those species. And then the graphs there on the right are just ag statistics from Missouri. And when you look at September 15th, typically we're not very far into harvest, or in corn or soybeans in the state. So this is just kind of a picture reference of the challenges we've got with harvest and getting cover crops seeded in a timely manner. Some different methods of seeding would be aerial, interseeding, broadcasting during harvest, seeding directly, immediately after harvest, broadcast and incorporate, with tillage, drill or plant. Or you may even be using multiple methods of broadcasting one and coming back with a planter or drill to plant the second one and incorporate that one. With aerial and interseeding, it's going to be fast. Timing is going to be some rule of thumbs there. 50% sunlight, in a standing corn crop, or roughly when the stalks are dry up to the ear. Soybeans, when the leaves are yellowing prior to leaf drop, and that time frame between yellowing and leaf drop is pretty tight. The reason there, you're wanting the seed, if you're interseeding into soybeans, to hit the soil and not hitting leaves that already have dropped. You want the leaves to mulch the seed and not have the seed on top of the leaves. Cost is going to be higher due to application equipment. Additional seed needed to be broadcast due to you're broadcasting instead of having seed placement in the soil. The effectiveness is going to be somewhat variable due to weather dependent after or just prior to that application. Rob's already kind of touched on some of these. Seeding at harvest, some of the thoughts I have, it is going to slow down harvest, adding seed to that applicator. Some thoughts I would have is it's likely going to work with some lower seeding rate species, just so you can get over more acres per fill. Maybe there's something you could do there to drop it onto the chaffer and have it spread it. With the larger combines we're getting, 40-foot heads, just getting a distribution across that can be challenging and have a lot of extra hoses and things on the combine. Broadcasting after harvest, Rich and I on the plots, this is what we did the first year. Kind of the thought process there was, it was fast. It was something a farmer may look at doing. Higher seeding rates. Germination is going to be delayed due to weather. If the seed's hitting the residue, it's going to have to get washed off or blown off that residue before it gets to the soil. Those types of things are just going to delay germination of that seed and not get as much fall growth. Added to fertilizer, spread pattern. We struggle with spread pattern on a regular fertilizer cart with the fertilizer, throwing the seed in there. We're going to get variable spreading there. This could be another method, broadcast as you're doing tillage. You're just adding the seeding box to, the tillage implement. One cautionary thing here, depth control. A lot of these seeds require a quarter to a half inch of depth for good germination. And farmers I know, when they have tillage out there, they try to drop it as far down in the soil as they can, just the fact that they can do that. And so getting that seed at that quarter to a half inch of depth can be challenging there. Drills, it's going to be more time consuming. The planting conditions in the fall can be very variable. We're going to have lower seeding rates and seed costs due to that, faster emergence. Drill availability on some farms may be an issue now since our wheat acres have dropped off considerably. If it's a smaller acreage, there may be some rental drills available for that. Row unit seeding, if the time or species allows, you're just adapting, a row unit planter or corn planter or split row planter to those seeding rates. Some modifications may need to be done to get the seeding rates low enough. Plates or drums may have to be kind of cross-referenced for that seed size. Example, the radish is similar to a milo seed size. Peas would be similar to soybeans. You're going to get faster germination. One thing to caution you if you're doing a single species like radish with a row unit, the purpose of the radish is to loosen that topsoil up. And if you plant those up and down the hill about March, you're going to have nice little erosion going down those rows where the radish was at. So if you're doing a single species, plant those on the contour or incorporate maybe a cereal, annual cereal rye with that to kind of hold the soil there. Multiple species, we've broadcast some species and then come back and planted over that, and those press wheels will press that smaller seed down to the soil. So you may be doing different seeding rates, at different times. So kind of to overcome the time crunch with harvest and that September 15th deadline, Rich and I have looked at seeding into standing corn and soybeans. Our research budget is a little less than what state staff have, so we've mounted these seeders onto spray boom, Heggie booms, and went into standing corn. This is some of the results we have gotten. It seems like we're getting better, more consistent results with going into standing corn. This would be a mix of radish and oats. This would be a simple mix for someone beginning. The two species would winter kill, would likely not change the management practices for the producer, the following spring, and not inhibit anything the following spring. Plus, right after harvest, after you've pulled out with the combine, your cover crop is there, ready to hopefully grow some more that fall. This past fall with the late, harvest, this was somewhat inhibited with, sunlight getting to the cover crop. Cereal rye is another one we've looked at. This was intended to be a 1 bushel rate, and operator error was about 2 bushel rate. So it is somewhat embellished with that seeding rate, but the cereal rye seems to respond well into the standing corn last fall also. And then right after harvest, you leave, and the cereal rye and those grasses do seem to tolerate the harvest traffic. Things like your radishes, are not going to tolerate that as well as the grasses. Seeding into beans, just as leaves are turning yellow prior to leaf drop, which is a pretty small window. Also select a cover crop that will not interfere with harvest. The crimson clover in this picture, at harvest is barely up and not even being clipped by the cutter bar. Rich and I had a colleague in Ohio a few years back. They decided to seed radish into soybeans, and it turned wet that fall, and before harvest of the soybeans, they were spraying gramoxone on the radishes to kill those, so they weren't running those through the combine. So any interseeding into soybeans, do not select something that's going to make harvest difficult later on. Maybe some producers would have a concern on knocking down soybeans, but it seems like we get pretty late in the summer with our spray applications for some weeds. If a sprayer has a 10-inch wide tires and a 75-foot width spread, we're running over roughly 2% of the field if we're destroying all the beans in that 2%. So 50 bushel bean crop, that would translate into a possible 1 bushel per acre, I guess, yield loss if you lost all that seed. This is showing some of the crimson clover we've seeded into the standing soybeans. Last fall, we did oats with the crimson clover. And then harvest, the oats were minimal interference with the combine, some clipping. The crimson clover was still below the cutter bar. Kind of our thought process in this whole method, for a producer, it's going to provide time for the seeding to be done late August. Hopefully provide adequate fall growth for the cover crop. Some crops are going to be more vigorous than others, and then also select the crop that's not going to interfere with harvest, particularly with soybeans. And then also keep in mind spring management. The picture on the left was the one and only time this producer used annual ryegrass. 2 attempts to spray it, and it was pretty much a tale that he was not going to try to use that again. The upper right, we've got the radishes that are breaking down real well, and then the lower right, we're looking at a cereal that's been killed early, and then provides for an easy planting bed there, later in the spring. And also, as Dr. Bradley pointed out, we want to make sure not promoting any potential weeds. This is a field of wheat that also has some cereal rye and annual ryegrass sticking up above it. So with that, is there any questions before I turn it over to Rich? Yes?
Does anybody study soil changes in those plots?
Soil changes?
Yeah, nutrient, pH,
I think
carbon.
Rich may touch upon those in a little bit.
Okay, I'm going to talk about a little bit of the other work that we're doing. Charlie did a bunch of his work at Silex on a different rolling soil. We got started in this in 2009 as an on-farm research project, and we were interested in how to introduce cover crops into a corn bean rotation. We really were looking at evaluating winter cover crops for the ability to improve our soil resources and reduce crop production risk in light of some weather changes that we haven't experienced since the 80s. To recap real quick here, we wanted to evaluate some plant species. We wanted to see which ones we could modify for our production sites, our soils. We wanted field scale plots. We wanted to use producers' equipment along with some GIS and GPS technology. Kent Shannon, for example, provided access to RTK survey grade equipment. Everything that we are doing is replicated with at least 4 replications. Some of the plots have 5 or 6. We were looking to evaluate crop yield data. That's primary because the farmer has to make a buck off of this. We were looking at seeding dates, seeding rates. One of the things we've discovered in our numerous farmer meetings on this is if you get very far past $20 an acre direct seed costs, the interest drops dramatically. And so, in due deference to Dr. Bradley, the reason you see some of these variations in seeding cost is what they're trying to accomplish. Pure research plots or practicality for what a farmer is going to look to do. We have also looking at some bulk density, rooting depths, nitrogen impact, and all of this was funded in part due to Missouri SARE. A little bit about the site that we're at. Mr. Jules Willott, who's on the farmer panel, agreed to let us use his farm. On the left, you see our 3 plot sizes. And to the right, you see the soil that we're on, which is a Mexico silt loam soil, which is a clay pan, and many of you understand the limitations of the clay pan. We're just outside and east of Ladonia, so that gives you a perspective where we're at in the northeast part of the state. We began this in 2009, and so what I've got here is our north plots. There are 5 replications here, and you can see that in 2009 we started out with monoculture on our species. Many of these we have continued and have 4 out of 5 years of the same winter cover crop in those sites. We have a south plot, which is a different timeline. So we have an August and a September seeding to try to accommodate folks that are planning to have cover crops and have a shorter season variety or following wheat fallow and not double cropping. On this one, we have some of the same species, but we have switched over. 2012 in the fall, we added a 3rd set of plots. These are 6 replications, and they're split plot. And my major professor would be rolling over in his grave for me to interpret split plots. So, but we have part of the plot has manure knifed in at on an average about 4,000 gallons per acre basis, and then the other part is not have any tillage run through it with the knifed in. And we're using cover crops all the way across. 2009 we started broadcasting. We had very good success there. 2010 was a wheat year, which we did not capture any data. 2011 we went to drilling because we wanted to make sure that we had some success. 2012 we did broadcast in the standing corn on the north plot, and we drilled the south plot. 2013 everything was drilled, August and September. We have captured some yield. 2 of the 5 years were prevented planting, so we have 2 years of data. 2010 we had soybeans that we harvested, and this is non-significant at the 5% probability. We did have a harvest biased on a north-south harvest, so we were able to pull some of the data out to at least give us an inkling as to if we had some success here. When we pull out the control and the tillage reddish because of the 5 reps and the same direction of harvest, we did find some significance for tillage radishes after 1 year. 2011, we started to try to capture some soil data. We were kind enough from Ken Suddeth to trust us with his penetrometer, that's a recording penetrometer, and I have samples at 6-inch increments all the way to 30 inches on all of the north plots, including all the replications. So we've not interpreted that data, but if anyone would like to help. 2012, just a reminder of, once in a generation, hopefully type of weather data. Across the top is the dotted line is the number of days above 90 degrees, which is kiss of death for corn. And there were over 14 days were over 100 degrees. Bottom is the lack of rainfall. What this shows is what you do when you manage improperly for soil moisture using your spring cover crops. In other words, we did not terminate this in a timely basis because we wanted to show folks at a field day Who knew it would not rain after that? So this data turns out to show what happens when you do not manage your soil moisture properly by terminating on time. Gulf ryegrass averaged 26 bushels of corn. The tillage radish averaged 52. There is a significant difference at 7.8 bushels, which means crimson clover, winter oats, and Gulf rye had some significant difference. Everything else was none. We wanted to use technology on this, and Dr. Peter Scarf has been kind enough to pioneer the green seeker and nitrogen readings for side dress, and we made use of that. We, Kent Shannon, who's working with us, did some biomass readings at Clifton City with some plots, and we did some rough draft estimation. We do not have enough data to really be sound on this, but this addresses how much seeding or biomass do we have to have some success on impacting soil characteristic changes. The one thing that did come out that is well documented due to Dr. Scarf's work is that we did see significant differences at the 1% probability on nitrogen side dress recommendations based on cover crop that was planted the fall before. So crimson clover, for example, required a side dress recommendation of 70 pounds per acre of nitrogen for that corn crop, and the Gulf annual ryegrass was 145 pounds. One of the things that I do want to end with to get us back on track is this is intended to be an on-farm practical, working with farmers on their farms with equipment and seeding rates and methods that they might use rather than a pure research plot. We will welcome other researchers that might like to take advantage of having 4 out of 5 years having cover crops, most of them the same species. We have added multiple species, as Charlie mentioned, to cover for tap and fibrous properties for erosion, sheet erosion prevention due to some of the rainfall things we've had. I'm finished, and I'm a little bit over, so I'll leave it up to the moderator whether we want questions or not.
Well, we can entertain perhaps one question, if someone has a few questions for us. Well, we are going to break now, so yeah, I'm sure you know.
Can I make a quick, or go ahead. I need to make a quick announcement. Christy said that if anyone who is here has not signed in or you've not picked up your name tag, you will not get lunch. Or you will be charged for it if you do pick up lunch and you don't have your name tag. So please go sign in. We also need that for our records for SARE. Thank you.
Yes. I know you hadn't crunched the numbers yet, but do you have a general impression on the penetrometer data?
No. That was simple. Now, we did that as a baseline. We were not in a hurry to process that. We've got 4 out of 5 years. We think we finally got enough of activity that we can begin doing soil characterization and see if there's changes. So look forward to future meetings, and you can ask then.
Thank you, Rich and Charlie. Please join me in thanking our excellent speakers this morning one more time.